Welcome to Singapore, where GDP numbers sparkle, sovereign wealth funds flex quietly in the background, and every policy speech sounds like it was proofread by a management consultant who bills by the comma. On the surface, this is a place of efficiency, finance, and flawless PowerPoint slides. Underneath it, there's Singlish. And no, this isn't a quirky linguistic mascot, it's a social sorting machine wearing flip-flops. Singlish is often sold as charm, a brand asset, a meme, something tourists laugh at while paying $12 for copy that costs 80 cents to make. Locals are told it's identity, as if identity conveniently stops at the office door the moment bonus season arrives. The truth is less Instagrammable. Singlish functions like a verbal watermark. Once you speak it in the wrong room, your ceiling quietly lowers. Here's the rule nobody writes down. Singlish is fine at the hawker centre. Singlish is adorable on TikTok. Singlish is unacceptable in rooms where capital decides who gets promoted, funded, or quietly replaced. This is not about language purity. This is about class signalling. In Singapore, language is not how you communicate, it's how you're priced. Finance loves precision. Markets reward clarity. Investors hate ambiguity unless they're the ones monetizing it. Yet Singapore tolerates a system where children are socialized into a linguistic register that later disqualifies them from the most lucrative layers of the economy. If you speak proper English, you're global. If you speak Singlish, you're local. And local, in financial terms, usually means replaceable. The irony is painful. Singapore's entire economic model depends on foreign capital, global markets, and English fluency. Hedge funds don't allocate in la. Private equity doesn't close deals with can. Sovereign wealth doesn't negotiate asset swaps with vibes. The money speaks a very specific English, and it expects you to speak it back without subtitles. Yet Singlish persists, not by accident, but by design. It creates a convenient internal stratification, a soft class boundary that looks cultural, feels harmless, and functions brutally. People who grow up code-switching flawlessly glide into banking, asset management, and policy roles. People who don't are told they just lack confidence, which is a polite way of saying the system worked exactly as intended. This is where the trap tightens. Singapore celebrates meritocracy while quietly charging rent on access. The child who sounds international is assumed to think international. The child who sounds local is assumed to stay local. One gets exposure to capital markets, property portfolios, and financial instruments. The other gets motivational posters about resilience. And yes, property. Because everything in Singapore eventually becomes about property. Language determines not just how you speak, but where you end up living. Districts, school zones, accents. They correlate suspiciously well. The people discussing rate yields and mortgage arbitrage rarely speak Singlish in boardrooms. The people stuck watching property prices outrun their salaries are told to laugh about it in memes. This is why calling Singlish cute is dishonest. Cute things don't cap your earning potential. Cute things don't follow you into interviews, client meetings, and cross-border negotiations. Cute things don't quietly remind you that global capital is listening and judging. Singlish isn't rebellion, it's containment. If this already makes you uncomfortable, good. That means you're still paying attention. And if you're here for narratives that connect language, class, money, stocks, property, and power, then do the algorithmic ritual. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. This series only gets more inconvenient from here. Singapore insists this is a fair race. Same track, same rules, same exams. Meritocracy, laminated and framed. What they don't mention is the accent tax that starts billing you before you're old enough to understand compound interest. Children don't choose Singlish. They inherit it. Family, neighborhood, school environment. By the time the system begins sorting them, the sorting has already happened. Language becomes the first silent filter, long before resumes, grades, or LinkedIn buzzwords enter the room. In theory, exams decide everything. In practice, articulation decides who gets listened to. Teachers are human. Interviewers are human. Humans associate certain sounds with intelligence, discipline, and future earning potential. This is not a moral failure. It's a predictable one. The system knows this. It simply pretends not to. Elite schools quietly polish accents. Tuition centers sell confidence packages that are really linguistic upgrades. Parents who can afford it buy fluency the same way they buy property in better districts. Location, location, pronunciation. Meanwhile, kids who grow up speaking Singlish fluently are later told to adjust when it suddenly matters. Adjust, but without extra time, money, or forgiveness. This is where meritocracy turns into finance cosplay. The market claims everyone starts equal, while insiders quietly hedge early. By the time students reach internships, the gap looks natural. One student sounds global, another sounds local. Guess who gets placed in front-facing roles with clients, and who gets back-office exposure disguised as learning opportunities? The financial sector loves to say it recruits the best. What it often recruits is familiarity. The cadence of international English signals safety to capital. It reassures investors that nothing unexpected will happen. Singlish, meanwhile, signals unpredictability. Not because it is, but because the listener hasn't priced it in. This bias compounds. Like interest, like property appreciation, like equity portfolios that outperform simply because they were allowed to start earlier. Students who speak polished English get sent to overseas programs, exposed to global finance narratives, and coached into thinking in asset classes. Others are kept domestic, operational, useful, but contained. By the time adulthood arrives, the damage looks self-inflicted. Why don't they speak better English? Becomes the question. Not, why did the system let language decide trajectory? Singapore's education system is efficient, brutally so. It measures outcomes well, but only the outcomes it cares about. Language isn't neutral here. It's an early indicator of who will later discuss stocks, who will later rent forever, and who will be told to be grateful just to participate. This is why Singlish survives. It keeps the machine running smoothly. It creates differentiation without open discrimination. It allows the state to claim fairness while capital quietly sorts the winners. And yes, this matters for money, for finance, for property, for who gets access to leverage instead of just labour. If you think this is only about vibes and culture, you've already missed the balance sheet. If you want the uncomfortable version of Singapore's success story, if you care about how language turns into class and class turns into capital, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Chapter 3 is where we follow Singlish into the workplace and watch it collide with money. This is the moment Singlish stops being culture and starts being career risk. Welcome to the Singapore workplace. Open-plan offices, glass walls, mission statements about diversity, and a very quiet agreement about how you're supposed to sound when money is involved. No one will tell you directly. They never do. They'll just stop putting you in front of clients. Here's how it works. Entry-level roles are friendly, inclusive, relaxed. Singlish flows freely in the pantry. Then comes the first promotion gate. Suddenly, meetings include overseas stakeholders. Emails are copied to regional HQ. Slides are no longer internal. This is where accents start showing up on performance reviews without ever being written down. He's technically strong, but she's capable, but client-facing might be a challenge. Let's keep him on execution for now. Execution, the most dangerous word in Singapore corporate life. It means you do the work, but you don't get proximity to power, and proximity is where finance lives. Deals don't happen in spreadsheets alone. They happen in conversations, in trust, in voices that sound safe to capital. Banks, asset managers, and real estate firms love to say they're global. What they mean is they are allergic to friction. Singlish creates friction, not because it's unclear, but because it reminds global capital that this isn't London, New York, or Sydney. And Singapore's entire value proposition is pretending it basically is. So the sorting begins. The polished English speakers get investor calls, regional rotations, exposure to funds, portfolios, capital allocation. The Singlish speakers get operations, compliance, execution-heavy roles that keep the machine running but never let you touch the steering wheel. This is where income divergence accelerates. Not because of intelligence, not because of effort, because language decides who gets access to leverage. One group learns how money multiplies, the other learns how salaries cap out. Property tells the same story. The people who sound global are the ones discussing mortgage optimization, investment properties, overseas real estate, REITs. The ones who don't are calculating whether the next cooling measure just erased another decade of hope. Same city, same prices, different futures. What makes this system elegant in a cold way is that no one has to enforce it explicitly. No laws, no memos, just preferences. Preferences that look professional. Preferences that conveniently align with class. Singlish defenders will say you can always code switch. That's true, in theory. In practice, constant code switching is cognitive tax. It's exhausting. And the people who don't have to pay it mistake their ease for superiority. By mid-career, the outcomes look natural. Some people own assets, others rent narratives, some talk about equity exposure, others are told to focus on gratitude. And Singlish, once celebrated, is quietly blamed for holding people back, as if it wasn't encouraged when it was harmless and punished when it mattered. This is not a language problem. It's a capital filter. If you're still watching, you already understand this isn't about accents. It's about who gets invited into money conversations. Like the video. Subscribe to the channel. This is where the illusion finally breaks. Singapore loves to call itself a global financial hub. The brochures say it. The rankings repeat it. Panels nod along. But global finance is not impressed by slogans. It listens to how you speak, how you frame risk, and how you narrate returns. And here's the uncomfortable part. The world does not code switch for you. In regional and global settings, Singlish stops being invisible and starts being loud, not in volume, in signaling. International investors are not racist villains twirling mustaches. They are cautious, boring, pattern-driven. They allocate capital to what feels familiar, legible, and frictionless. Accents matter because trust compounds faster than spreadsheets. Singapore's elites understand this instinctively. That's why the people sent to Davos-style forums, global roadshows, sovereign fund negotiations, and cross-border property deals sound interchangeable with London or New York. They are not chosen randomly. They are selected because they don't remind capital that Singapore is small, Asian, or different. Singlish, in this context, becomes a liability. Not culturally. Financially. It breaks the illusion that Singapore is just Asia with Western operating standards. And that illusion is the product being sold. Here's the quiet tragedy. Singapore produces talent capable of managing billions. But global capital doesn't just buy competence, it buys comfort. When communication introduces even slight uncertainty, investors mentally discount the opportunity. Not consciously, automatically, like a risk premium added without explanation. So who absorbs that discount? Not the system, not the funds, the people filtered out before they ever get to speak. This is where the class trap tightens. The same Singlish celebrated as national identity at home becomes an invisible ceiling abroad. People are told to be proud of it, right up until pride costs access to international mandates, overseas postings, and global deal flow. And yes, this affects money flows. It affects where regional HQ roles go. It affects which professionals get exposure to foreign assets, offshore structures, and international property portfolios. It affects who learns how capital migrates during crises. Singapore's competitiveness depends on pretending this isn't happening. Acknowledge it, and the meritocracy story starts leaking. Because if language affects capital access, then outcomes were never purely earned. They were curated. The cruel irony is that Singlish helps sell Singapore domestically while quietly limiting Singaporeans internationally. It keeps the system stable, locals feel represented, elites remain globally legible, capital stays comfortable. This is not cultural pride, it's risk management. If this makes you uneasy, good. That means you're following the money instead of the marketing. Like the video. Subscribe to the channel. Here's the part everyone pretends not to see. Language doesn't just shape careers, it shapes balance sheets. By the time Singaporeans hit their late 30s and 40s, outcomes look fixed. Some people own appreciating assets. Others own stories about how hard they work. Some talk about equity exposure, global funds, second properties. Others talk about cost of living and hope the next policy tweak doesn't move the goalposts again. This isn't random, it's cumulative. People filtered early by language are filtered again by role, filtered again by exposure, filtered again by proximity to money. Eventually, they're filtered out of wealth creation altogether. Salaries plateau, bonuses cap. Meanwhile, the asset-owning class rides stock markets, property appreciation, and capital inflows that were never equally accessible in the first place. This is why Singlish is dangerous to romanticize. It feels harmless because it operates slowly, quietly, over decades. No single moment looks unjust. The injustice only appears when you zoom out and compare net worths, not vibes. Stocks don't care about identity, but access to stock literacy does. Property doesn't care about accents, but access to leverage does. Finance claims neutrality while benefiting from filters it refuses to name. Singapore's genius lies in making inequality look like personal failure. Didn't make it? Try harder. Didn't buy property? Save more. Didn't move up. Improve yourself. Meanwhile, the system that decided who would ever be taught how money really works remains politely off camera. Singlish helps keep it that way. It creates a national feeling of togetherness while allowing class separation to proceed without friction. Everyone laughs at the same jokes. Not everyone ends up owning the same city. And the cruelest twist, those who escape the trap often turn around and defend it. They call it culture. They call it resilience. They call it uniquely Singaporean. Anything, really, except what it is. A beautifully efficient class filter disguised as charm. Singlish isn't the villain. The lie around it is. If Singapore ever wants to talk honestly about inequality, it will have to start with language, not as culture, as capital. Until then, the trap stays intact, humming quietly beneath the skyline. If this series made you uncomfortable, it did its job. If it made you think about stocks, property, money, class, and power differently, reward the algorithm, like the video, subscribe to the channel. This wasn't about Singlish being bad. It was about pretending it's harmless.